Hi, almost everyone is watching my channel without a subscription. Please support me and subscribe. I release videos every day for you. Story 1. The husband demands that his wife get an abortion, but she wants to. My wife and I, both mid-30s, have been happily married for 9 years. We don't have any kids and don't want kids. We had the what-if talk before getting married. She told me she would want to have an abortion if she ever got pregnant. Yesterday, my wife told me she's 9 weeks pregnant. She's on the pill, but accidents happen. She said she wants to carry to term and give the baby up for adoption. Naturally, I was surprised by the news and her change of mind. I asked her if she considered getting an abortion. She said she had, but she doesn't want to because she feels a bond to the fetus. She told me she has been researching adoption and learned that the local adoption agencies only accept birth mothers who are okay with having an open adoption. I told her I wasn't really comfortable with this and asked her if she would have an abortion. She started crying and spent the night at her sister's place. She won't answer my phone calls. I'm uncomfortable with this for a few reasons. I was adopted at birth, and my adoptive parents weren't the best. I know this isn't the case for everyone who was adopted, but I can't help but have a negative view about it. A few years ago, I tried to find my biological parents to learn my medical history, but I couldn't. I was sore about it for a little while, but it doesn't bother me anymore. My wife is aware of these points. I just don't want to pass on my genes because they're essentially a mystery to me. I also don't like kids. My wife said she actually would prefer to keep the baby, but she knows I wouldn't want to. So she said having an open adoption sounded like a reasonable compromise. I understand why she thinks that, but I still don't want to have any biological children, regardless of how much/little I would be involved in raising him or her. Edit. My wife takes birth control for reasons other than contraception. If she ever wanted to stop taking it, I would support her 100%. I realize that I'm an idiot for not getting a vasectomy a long time ago, though. It honestly never occurred to me until now. I think because my wife has always been on birth control and said she would have an abortion. I see now that it was irresponsible of me to not get one regardless. I'm going to get snipped ASAP. At number 2, she and I talked. It was emotional for both of us, but no voices were raised. Here are the main takeaways. I apologized for putting her in this position by being an idiot and not getting a vasectomy earlier. I also apologized if she felt like I was pressuring her when I asked her to have an abortion. I didn't mean to pressure her, but I know words aren't always received as we intended. She said she felt pressured a little, but forgave me because she knows I was totally caught off guard. She apologized for having a change of heart regarding abortion. She said she was really surprised by her own feelings and hopes I don't feel like she tricked me. I don't. We mutually agreed that it would be good to spend one more night apart to really think. We've always have a strong marriage, and we're both committed to working through this, whatever that may look like. My wife and I have been seeing a therapist together. We've also been seeing different therapists individually. I eventually started warming up to the idea of being a father. I began to realize just how shattered my wife would be if she gave up the baby. I'd notice her quietly singing or talking to the unborn child when she thought I couldn't hear. I think this is ultimately what swayed me. My wife is a kind, gentle, intelligent, generous, thoughtful, wonderful woman. She would be a wonderful mother, and she deserves to be one. She deserves to have a supportive spouse on her team. We started discussing parenting. During those tense, emotional, and heavy weeks, I only saw my wife express a bit of joy any time we talked about keeping the baby. I looked into taking some parenting classes. We hadn't arrived at a firm decision to keep the baby at that point, but I would say that's where things were leaning. My wife miscarried 2 weeks ago. Needless to say, she's beyond heartbroken, beyond grieving. I'm a strange mix of distraught, disappointed, and relieved. Feeling any kind of relief at all makes me feel like a monster. I'm just downright confused and don't really know what to make of my conflicting emotions. I'm doing my best to be there for my wife amid my own confusing thoughts. Her sister spends a few nights a week at our place to offer support as well. I will say that I don't feel as strongly child-free as before. It's not impossible to see myself as a father. My vasectomy is scheduled for October 29th. I'm considering canceling the procedure. I don't want to add to my wife's grief by definitively blocking her chance of having a biological child with me. Story 2. I'm feeling a lot of anger toward my ex-wife's affair child after being asked to be his father figure. My wife confessed to the affair about a week after telling me she was pregnant. So a week I'd spent excited about what I thought was going to be my child. Turns out no, it was an emotionally pretty traumatic time. I might have been able to work through the infidelity, but made the ultimatum that she had to end the pregnancy. She was philosophically opposed to abortion, and I knew this. She stuck to her morals in that particular instance, and so I initiated a divorce. She has since married her affair partner. Regarding custody of our sons, there was a period of more conflict and resistance. I took the boys in the initial period of Max's infancy, and in the initial highly emotionally injured state I sought full permanent custody. But I wasn't likely to be successful, and I was eventually persuaded that despite the breakdown of my relationship with her, that it's in my sons' best interests to have their mother in their lives. Today, to the amazement of everyone else in my life, my ex and I remain cooperating partners in the parenthood of our children. For the last 2 years, we've shared week-to-week custody of our 2 sons. This upcoming school year, Max is going to be old enough to attend the same school. About a month ago, I got sat down by my ex, her partner, and all 3 boys, and they all want Max to travel back and forth with the boys each week and effectively live with me 50% of the time. Seriously. There are some arguments for it, admittedly. The 3 boys are friends and brothers as much as I resent it. Splitting them up regularly does seem like a weird sibling dynamic that could have poor consequences. I'm angry with my ex for broaching the topic with the boys before me, but it's also an entirely reasonable thing for the boys to have an opinion on. I agreed. What was I supposed to say? No? Why not? I can't say it because I hate that Max exists. So I said, I do hate him. I know he doesn't deserve to be hated. I know he's no more responsible for the circumstances of his conception than any of us. But knowing that doesn't seem to matter. He's a walking, talking reminder of all the worst emotions that I've ever felt. I'm coming to end of his 2nd week staying with us and the boys. We have moved him into my home and made space for him. I hate the sound of his voice. If he needs help in the kitchen, I am immediately annoyed with no good reason. I'm constantly angered by his limitations that are entirely in line with being a 5-year-old. Things I would never get angry with my sons over. I'm short-tempered and just energized with this useless visceral anger. I feel like the last years of my life have been a carousel of humiliations and degradations. The only way I've been able to keep everything together is constantly repeating to myself that pragmatic argument that no matter how authentic my grievances are and no matter how justified I am in my anger, it doesn't help me or my sons for me to devolve into an embittered rage hermit. Just hold my tongue, breath deep, and force myself to do the thing that will actually help. So I remain in regular contact with their mother, and I talk to her politely on the topics that I have to. Since recognizing that I don't have the legal power to exclude him from my sons' lives, I've been cordial with Max's father. That I've been able to do these things has been the only thing about myself worth feeling good about. But maybe it's not worth feeling good about. Maybe I regret being civil, because in Max's presence that pragmatic argument is just not enough. It's like all the anger I've set aside through sheer force of will returns at once and possesses me while I have to talk to him. I thought I was doing the right thing, but if I had remained combative and negative, I never would have ended up in this position. What do? I'm constantly thinking I want to back out, to say no, I can't do this, I'm sorry. But how could I justify that? No one else in the situation will be happy with that. The boys certainly don't understand why there would be a reason for them to be treated differently based on their parentage. My oldest has told me so explicitly, in a moment that made me feel both proud of him and ashamed of my own anger. Their mother and her partner would be upset. Part of me doesn't care, and bitterly assumes they're just trying to get some free time for themselves out of this, but I'm trying not to dwell on that. My ex makes good arguments that this is in the best interests of all of the children, but part of me just remembers how long she lied to me and how totally I trusted her in that time. It seems like the only thing to do is the same thing I've ever done. Suck it up and get over myself and my anger. But if I do that, then I have to actually do that. Even if I'm being a responsible babysitter for Max right now, he deserves to live in a home where he is loved, not merely tolerated. Can I do that? Maybe I can't do that. I'm scared of a path forward where I can't work up the nerve to back out of this arrangement and consign myself to getting over it. And then I actually don't get over it, but rather dwell ever angrier with how my life has turned out and take it out on the undeserving around me. Update. Hey everyone, it's been a few weeks since you heard from me. I guess I'm kind of in a spot to update now. So my post got a lot of feedback, and it was pretty much unanimous. I heard from lots of people, parents and sons and daughters in blended families, people who'd been cheated on themselves, people who were Max in their own families, and you all told me what I should have been able to admit myself, that this was not normal, that no one had ever heard of an arrangement like this. I resolved to end the arrangement and met with my ex-wife and her partner to tell them a few days after I posted, midway through their custody week. Many people advised me to speak to my boys about it first, like my ex did to me, but I wanted to deliver the message before having to take Max again. I was thinking that it might be better to instead call them out on that behavior and try to get them to agree not to include the boys in that level of discussion before me. And then we could all sit down with the boys. The meeting did not go well. They were both pretty mad at me. I had tried to prepare for it to be uncomfortable. I told myself just to be polite and firm, that I didn't owe them an explanations beyond "I'm sorry, it's not working out." I guess he had made some career move based on this schedule that I was fucking up. In hindsight, I do feel sort of responsible for that frustration, in that I regret agreeing to this arrangement in the first place. But at the moment, I really was not giving a fuck about this man's work-life balance. Then he said something about how I wasn't being fair, that they just wanted a fair custody arrangement. That made me very mad. Thinking about this all to type it out has my heart hammering. I have some different opinions on fairness. I said some pretty shitty, regrettable things to both of them. And then we were all screaming at each other for a while. And then I stormed out and I didn't talk to the boys. I didn't get to talk to my boys for several days until handoff. They immediately were asking about why Max wasn't with them, and I, prepared for it, held a more serious talk with them than I had up to this point. I talked about how it's great that they enjoy spending time with Max, but that I'm their father and that Max has his own father to spend time with. I also talked about how this whole spectacle of our lives is difficult for me, that I don't like having to spend only every other week with them. That their mother's decision to start another family with Max's father and Max still makes me sad. This is pretty awfully difficult stuff to talk about. I've been pretty strict with myself about not venting to my sons about their mother up until now, but effectively that's meant I haven't really talked about her or our breakup at all. If you can't say anything nice, as they say. Trying to maintain that respect for their mother, and also talk frankly about my own feelings, is a difficult tightrope balance. I don't want to blame their mother, but I also don't want to not blame their mother, if you know what I mean. This would be one of the situations I identify as unfair, where the responsible thing is to never say anything disparaging or poisonous to my sons about their mother, my ex. But that means I have to describe the current state of affairs and what has happened to get here in a way that isn't disparaging to their mother, and act like this is normal. She decided. I think I actually did a good job navigating the conversation. My sons absorbed it easier than I expected. A few weeks later and things with them are basically normal. I have had a few short conversations with my ex since our big embarrassing blow-up. I sort of feel like I want her to apologize for this whole thing, but also know that I'm not doing myself any favors waiting for that to happen. I think she remains upset with me, more for the things I said than the rejection of this arrangement with Max. Or maybe that's just projection, because that's what I feel guilty for. I also regret that the last time I spoke to Max was dropping him off before ending the arrangement. I don't know. I guess his mom has explained to him that she missed him too much to have him gone each week, but I don't know how sturdy that story will be. Rereading my last post has me feeling pretty shameful of how I talked about Max. I know he doesn't deserve my sustained ire, and that he's not going anywhere, so I'll have to be able to adjust to his presence. I'm obviously holding on to a lot of anger that is really about my ex-wife, but she isn't obligated to give a shit about that, and I am obligated to interact with her politely, so I guess that anger just got set aside and then vented onto Max just because he was there in my face, but that was my own fault. So I sort of expect things will pretty much return to normal from here. Contact with my ex is curt right now, but that will loosen up. Thanks to almost everyone who commented or reached out to me. Story 3. My husband of 5 years asked me for a threesome with my best friend, and she agreed. My husband of 5 years asked for a threesome with my best friend, and she agreed. I originally posted this in truth off my chest, but it deleted it and my update, so I'm posting everything here, including my most recent update, but I'm certain more is going to happen as this situation is incredibly fresh. I, 26F, met my husband, 35M, 7 years ago, and we have been married for 5 of those years. I love my husband and all that he has done for me, but I fear that my marriage and my relationship with my best friend is now over. Not to mention I just found I'm pregnant, and this only started happening after I told my husband. He was very much on board with having a child with me, and we have been trying for around 6 months. For context, my best friend, 28F, let's call her Mia, knew my husband before me, and they were incredibly close before I'd even knew him. When I first met my husband, I suspected there was something going on between them, but they always denied it. However, they admitted while they were drunk that they were indeed sleeping together before I got with my husband. Even though it's not important now, it still plays on my mind, you know. especially considering what just happened. Anyways, 2 weeks ago, my husband suggested a threesome for the first time, and I was already not on board with it. I quickly said no and hoped he'd never bring it up again. 2 days after that, he suggested it again, and I once again declined. He asked again that night after we had sex, and once again, I said no. After that, he stopped asking, and I thought that was the end of it. However, 3 days ago, he asked me out to lunch, and I was pretty excited, considering he never takes me on dates anymore. When we got to the restaurant, my best friend was sitting there, and was confused because he never mentioned that she'd be there. The vibe was weird from the start, but I tried to think nothing of it. Halfway through the lunch, my husband asked me again. I went to consider the idea of a threesome again, and I thought it would be a good idea if Mia was involved. I didn't know what to say. I asked if Mia knew about this, and she said yes, and that she'd known about his plans for over a month. I was devastated. I said no, paid for my meal, and left with my car. I feel so betrayed and hurt right now, I have no words. This man is meant to be the father of my child, but I can't look at him. I've been staying with my mom, and he's been phoning me and calling me dramatically, and that he'll just drop it. Mia has been spamming me too, saying the same thing. I don't know what to do. Edit 1. I've seen lots of people tell me to abort my child. I'm so incredibly torn on this, as my mother would be so upset if I aborted her grandchild. She was so happy to see my sister give birth, and I want to provide her that happiness again. On the other hand, I don't want to look at my child with the knowledge that it is his. Not to mention that he could possibly want some sort of visitation rights to my child. I've also seen people saying that Mia may be pregnant with his child too, and the threesome would be an excuse as to how she got pregnant. I feel it could be a stretch, but I'm probably going to arrange a talk with both of them later today. It's 8 a.m. as I type this. I'll let everyone know what happens. Update the next day. They both agreed to arrange a talk with me this morning, and I'm not even that shocked, but I still can't stop crying. When I arrived, they were sitting so close to each other, it genuinely made me feel so sick. They didn't seem upset at all. They were just talking like normal, and even smiling, which is so gross to me seeing, as they both know how upset I am right now. Anyways, when I sat down, I flat out asked them if they had been seeing each other behind my back, and everything I've been suspecting these past 3 days was confirmed. They had been sleeping with each other. I am so heartbroken right now. I don't think I can carry this child. These past few days have felt so unreal, and I'm a wreck. I know that it's early to decide this, but I do think abortion is the correct decision for me. I also asked him why he decided to tell me now and not earlier or when I wasn't carrying his child, and he literally just shrugged and shook his head and then said, "I don't know." As if that was a good enough answer. Mia was mostly quiet the whole time, but I don't think she feels the slightest bit of guilt. To everyone saying divorce, that is most likely what will happen. I'm terrified, as I've known him for most of my adult life, and he is the only man I've ever been with. He is in control of our bills, our rent, and overall finances. I literally have no idea what I'm doing. Edit 3. Time is literally a blur right now. I'm receiving messages from pro-lifers, and it's getting to me even though I know I can't have this child. My mother-in-law has also started spamming me too. I blocked my husband's number, and I did the same with Mia. His mother won't stop messaging me. I blocked her number, but she then went out of her way to message me on Instagram and Facebook. She keeps saying I should have just done the threesome to make her boy happy. It's fucking weird. Sorry if my replies to comments aren't frequent. I'm dealing with so much depression and anxiety right now, and I'm also struggling with the fact that aborting this child is the best thing for it. Thank you for all the support.